Hello, everyone. Welcome to the UpRev Ninja Podcast. If this is your first time listening, thanks for joining us. This show is produced each week with the single intent of discovering the tips, tricks, hacks, and lessons learned from our guests that has catapulted them into living the best version of themselves. Join your host, Tom Hudson, as he continues his search for the best methods to UpRev his life. Now, let's dive into the show.
Today I interview Laura De La Cruz, an international best-selling author of over 100 books and journals and host of the Leash Up podcast. Laura has been herding for 12 years and has trained, trialed, and/or titled a variety of dogs. She is both an AKC herding judge and an AHBA herding judge and approved to judge A, B, and C courses in AKC, and has judged them all. Laura lives in New Mexico between Las Cruces and El Paso, Texas, where she owns and operates Take Pen Herding and is the founder of the Leash Up dog training program. Laura is owned by 3 Border Collies, 5 Aussies, 1 Kelpie, and 2 livestock guardian dogs. She is currently working on her next herding and dog training books and journals. Now, let's dive into the interview with Laura. So, welcome, Laura, to the UpRev Ninja podcast. Laura, I shared your bio at the beginning of the show. And but that being said, I'd like for you to kind of fill in some blanks. I mean, I know you're a best-selling author. You've got a ton of books. I actually, went out to Amazon and looked at some of those. You've got the Leash Up podcast, and I've got to be honest with you, I've had dogs ever since I was just a kid, and I think I really learned a lot by when I got older. Just, the dogs were not really well behaved, and I didn't know what I was looking for, but you had a really good episode recently about how to choose and how to pick a dog, and I thought that was beneficial. But you've got a lot of experience, the AKC that you get involved in, and I love how you said in your bio that you're owned by, and you've got, I don't know, like 10 dogs or so, right?
Right. Yes.
So what got you into obviously this is your passion. What got you involved in this?
Well, so it started out a long time ago, but not that long ago. I was like you when I was younger. I had dogs, but they were backyard dogs. They really weren't part of the family. You go out, you feed them, you pet them. Okay. I got older and I brought them into the house, but they still really weren't part of the family.
Right.
Weren't really trained. They just kind of hung out with me. They're just sort of there, like, very nice, warm, fuzzy furniture. I ended up, when I was, after I finished my first master's degree, being able to teach part-time at the University of Texas at El Paso.
Okay.
And our secretary in the department, her husband, taught agility, which is where the dogs run through the obstacle courses and have a lot of fun. They go over the jumps and teeter-totter and all those fun things. So I said, wow, wouldn't that be fun? I have a little schnauzer. Let me, go over there and try this out. Well, I really enjoyed it, although I'm not very graceful. And Bob said to me, if you really want to do dog things, you should get a Border Collie. So I went to this woman, Joan Morgan, and said, I want a Border Collie. And she said, no. you can't handle a Border Collie, crazy. And she goes, you have retired greyhounds and you do needlework in the evening. What are you going to do with a Border Collie?
Right.
And so I said, no, really, I can handle this. I picked out the most dominant puppy in the litter. I said, look, that puppy loves me. And she just laughed and said, I will let you buy this puppy but in return, you need to go to puppy class. And I said, okay. And she said, you need to go to a lot of puppy classes. And I said, okay. So this Border Collie I bought, Joker was his name. Okay. And I went to puppy class 4 or 5 times a week for the first 2 years of his life. We did obedience. We did rally obedience. We did tracking. We did agility. We did a lot of things. And in doing so, what I discovered was that you can actually have a partnership, a more fulfilling relationship with your pet, that they can be more than just fluffy furniture. And after I'd had Joker for about 3 years, all along people kept telling me, you have a Border Collie, you should go do some herding. And I said, sure, I don't know what that is, but okay. And I finally decided to go find somebody who might be able to teach me how to do this. So Joker and I went on our big adventure of learning to herd, and everything after that was just sort of like history. The next thing I know, I'm living out in the desert on 5 acres with sheep and goats and ducks and geese and 10 dogs, and I'm training people and I'm judging herding competitions, and it just kind of took off from there.
So is it true that they say, I mean, this is, the whole Cesar Millan aspect, right? Is it really true that you're training the dog, or is it you're training the owner?
You're training the owner.
Yeah.
And here's kind of the one thing I think the best thing that Joker probably taught me was the whole idea of being the pack leader and dominating. While in theory makes sense, the reality is you don't develop a partnership by dominating anybody or anything. Right. You develop a partnership by mentoring and encouraging, and both of you learning from each other and supporting. And what happened was that hit me that, really it's not about the dog being part of your pack and you being the pack leader. It's more about the dog's part of your family and you're the parent.
Okay. So, yeah. So how's that translated into the rest of your life? Family, business, and everything else.
Yeah, well, it made me a better teacher, and I teach full time at the college that's part of New Mexico State University at the Doña Ana Community College. And this has made me a better teacher because explaining herding is complicated. It's hard for people to grasp. It's not a simple sport where, like with golf, you can put the ball down and hit it 1,000 times until you're good.
Right.
With herding, the livestock are always moving.
Yep. So
you're in the middle of this nonstop movement that you're trying to control and fulfill some objective, like going through an obstacle. So in the process of learning how to do that and learning how to teach people that, I became a better teacher for my students in the business department, in explaining to them how to think for themselves, how to become more creative, how to trust themselves better in, making decisions that might seem like, why am I going to pursue this career? Try it. You have nothing to lose, really. If you don't go out and kind of follow your passion, you're going to be stuck in a 9-to-5 job the rest of your life and maybe miserable.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I going back to the golf thing, I don't know. I can't find the golf ball after I hit it. So,
right?
Yeah. So when did that aha moment, when did that light switch go off? I mean, you said you took, multiple classes there with Joker, and, was it after that first class? Was it, the fourth year into it? When did you start to see that you could, take some of those lessons learned and how they were impacting the other parts of your life?
I think it took a little longer than that, because I really, when I was first learning all of this, the whole dominate, pack thing was still very big.
Right.
So I still kind of bought into it, and it really wasn't until Joker and I started doing the herding, and we'd been doing that for a couple years, and I still ordered him around and, tried to be the boss. And somebody said to me, you guys could be a really good team, but you're not trying hard enough. You need to start trusting your dog. And I thought, trust your dog? He'll eat a sheep. And he said, no, trust your dog. And so when I had that kind of aha moment of, oh, okay, all right, go. And the dog went, thank God, and went and did what he was supposed to do. And, everything was great. I went, oh, okay. This is something that, it's when you have children, right, you kind of have to trust them too at some point. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So you let them make their mistakes, and if they make a mistake, you correct it, or you let them know that you're not happy with that and you'd like them to try harder, and then you praise them and you tell them how great they are and how much you love them when they do well. So when I started doing that, my dogs got much better, and I got much better.
And just to make sure, Joker was your first dog that you started all this training with, and
yes.
Okay. So when did you get your second dog?
Well, about the time I started herding.
Okay.
The person I was taking lessons from bred Australian Shepherds, so I bought an Australian Shepherd and worked with her. And in retrospect, it was interesting. Joker was very strong. He was a very dominant dog, and he knew what he was going to do. My little Aussie Itzy was not quite like that, and so I still was in that domination mode, and so I was real hard on her instead of letting her work.
Mm-hmm.
So she never really fulfilled her potential because I held her back
Okay.
with my inability to understand, what needed to be done. The Australian Shepherds I have now, because I have Border Collies and Australian Shepherds, are much further along in reaching their potential because I'm letting them get there instead of trying to force them into putting a round peg into a square hole.
Right. So how, like, have you taken those lessons and kind of looked at them on yourself, rather than, almost like prejudging yourself, or, like you just said, the square peg in the round hole? Have you looked at yourself and like, oh, wow, I've actually have always done this. And have you been able to take those lessons and change the way that you operate yourself?
Yes. I've become a better person because of this, in terms of I'm more patient, I'm more understanding, I'm more willing to recognize that everybody has their own unique skills, and if you nurture those, they can reach their potential. So I became a much better teacher at the college because I can look past the appearance of a student and find out what really motivates them and help them reach that goal.
Don't you wish we could just bundle all these lessons learned and put them in that instruction booklet that you get when you're born?
Right. Well, and you spend half your life figuring it out, and then the second half going, gosh, I wish I'd known this 20, 30 years ago.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm a father, and I'm always trying to impart that wisdom, and I feel like sometimes as soon as I do, I'm like, oh, that was bad advice, because now I've just learned this new thing that's even better,
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
but I think that's the thing, being able to be vulnerable, being able to share what you've learned, as well as just not being stuck, saying, no, this is not being stubborn, this is the way, and there's no other way that's better than this way. So
right. And I think the other important lesson is you have to be willing to take a risk and fail.
Right.
Because failure is not the end of the world. In fact, you probably learn more by failing than you would if you succeeded.
I completely agree with that. Do you have a good story around failure that you experienced?
Oh, I fail all the time.
Awesome. Great. We all do.
I shoot for a daily failure, and then I can, like I said, my failure with my first Australian Shepherd later on, that was one of those things where you go, if I could go back in time. And, I mentally apologize to her on a regular basis and say, you tried your little heart out, and I just, I didn't know. And now that I know, we could have gone much further and accomplished much more, because I could have been the support you needed,
Right.
And you see this often. And I think as parents, we do this all the time. We make mistakes and we think it's the end of the world. And then by the time, and I'm a grandmother, by the time you have grandchildren, you realize you can really make a lot of mistakes and it's not going to cause permanent damage.
Right.
And it's the same thing with a dog. You can mess up. People get all freaked out about, ooh, I didn't do this right. It's like the dog's going to forgive you. They don't care.
Right. Yeah, we try to put our emotions and feelings and everything on, dogs and everything else in this world. So what do you feel has held you back in the past from becoming, the best version of yourself? I mean, it sounds like you've grown a lot, and you've got some really good experiences here. But reflecting back, what do you think was one of the big things that held you back?
Probably fear of failure.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And then once I realized that you could try things and you go, oh well, that didn't work, and so you try something different. I have a student that comes out with her Border Collie. She's a top agility person. The dog's this amazing agility dog. But when they first came out, we really struggled getting the beginning of each lesson right. because in herding, the beginning is pretty much always done where you lay the dog down, the person goes towards the sheep, you get the dog to go around the sheep and help you move them, and the dog gets that in their mind. Well, her dog, because it's an agility dog, is used to leaving from her feet, going straight, fast forward. And we tried for the first couple of lessons, to try and just pound it into this dog's head that, no, you really, and about the second lesson, and I'm looking at the two of them and they're both just so frustrated. And I went, you know what? Let's just stop. Hold on for a minute. I mean, I got to be smarter than this. I said, we normally wait until a dog's been trained about a year or so to send them from your feet. We're just going to start you from that.
Okay.
Do it. Yeah. We're going to come up with a different way of doing this because there's no point in trying to pound this into you. You guys are just miserable. So this dog now just leaves from her feet and swings out and picks up the sheep and, takes them around and covers their fur and just does a great job. But we had to kind of turn the whole standard training method on its head to fit the needs of her and her dog.
I think that's fantastic. I mean, if you're not flexible, in many things in this life, you're not going to be successful. So I think that's a fantastic. So, it sounds like, you've had a lot of mentors and, I was a martial arts teacher at one point in my life. So, the whole adage of, your students become your teachers. I assume you've learned a lot just from, all the people you've taught, the judging as well as, the classes you've taught and that you've taken. Is there, a piece of advice, like a best piece of advice that you've ever received?
Oh, okay. So here's my here's my funny story about me and my herding. So Joker and I started working, and we worked for about 3 years, and I was like, I think I know what I'm doing. This is pretty good. I'm pretty good. I'm pretty happy. We go in, we get it done, and we leave, and it's okay. So I went to a clinic because I'm a big believer in just nonstop learning.
Right.
I'm a lifetime learner. And okay, I'm going to go to this clinic. So I go, I'm working, and the guy putting on the clinic looks at me and he goes, you and your dog could be good, but you're not trying. You're just coasting. You're just, doing the minimum to get by. He goes, if you stepped it up, you could be good. And I went, oh, okay. Well, so then I set about challenging myself. I went to other trainers. I really worked on the craft. I tried to get better. I was like, I'm going to get better. This is going to be good. And so about 3 years later, I took Joker's son, his name's Ace, to see one of the top border collie guys in the country, Alistair McRae, and get a lesson. So I send Ace out, and we're working the sheep. We're in about 5 acres, moving stock around. And we finish, and I look at him, and I go, so what do you think? And he goes, you two could be pretty good, but you're just coasting. Because, if you really tried, and I went, oh my gosh, this is like almost word for word what I had heard 3 years before.
Wow.
And he was right. I had gotten better. And so I was like, well, I went from a D to a B. So what more do I need to do?
Right.
And he was like, step it up and you could be better. So the best piece of advice I've ever heard is don't settle.
I love that. I mean, continuous improvement, right? There's always something we can do to be better. So that's fantastic. So you mentioned earlier about, failure, and you had a quick quip in there about, you try to fail at least one thing every day. Do you have like is that something you really do? Is there like a tip, trick, or something that you just swear by that you feel really helps catapult you to that next level?
Well, I think that the thing about, failing every day, and I teach business. So, I always tell my students, for example, if you're in sales, your goal, for each day should be like 10 no's. I want 10 people to tell me no. So I'm going to keep asking people to buy my product until I get 10 no's. That becomes you're overcoming the fear of the no. So if you're going to fail each day, if then you can say, oh, look, I didn't do that well. I was, crabbier this morning than I should have been. I didn't manage that conference call the way I should have, or I said this instead of that, so that I do a lot of reflection towards the end of the day to see what I could have improved on, and and how I can get better at all the things I do.
That's great. Do you do that by like journaling or just taking a time with a cup of tea? Just like, kind of walk me through that process. What does that daily reflection routine look like for you?
Journaling with a shot of whiskey.
All right, now we're talking.
Yeah. For myself, a couple that bought an Australian Shepherd puppy from me brought me a bottle of apple bourbon for Christmas.
Nice.
And I'd never had apple bourbon. And so now every night I have a little bit of apple bourbon and get out my pen and my journal, and I, write down, okay, what's my continuous improvement for today? What am I working on? And the other thing too is that then I find things that I want to learn.
Right. Yeah.
I go, ooh, I want to pursue that. And then I write that down because, that additional learning aspect of just pick something crazy, take a class in astrophysics. What the heck?
So I've got a friend that runs a podcast, and he just interviewed Neil deGrasse Tyson. I haven't listened to the podcast yet, but it's
awesome.
Yeah, right. And I want to say the title is Astrophysics for People That Don't Have the Time or something like that. So I'm looking forward to listening to that. So that being said, is there something that you're working on right now that, one of these things that you want to learn? Is there, something you're currently working on?
Podcasting.
Okay, awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Good company.
And honestly, kudos to you and the other people that interview people and, are doing this on a regular basis. The learning curve for podcasting is much higher than I thought it was going to be. And last fall, I had told my one of my business classes, I said, I'm going to start a podcast on my dog training. And my accountability is, I promise you, when I come back in January and I see you again, I will have this started.
Okay.
So when I came back in January, they come up and they go, do you have it started? And I said, I just released my first episode. And, having to learn all of that, my goal for the summer is my granddaughter and I are going to start a podcast called Enchanted New Mexico. Okay. And we're going to go on the road and interview people in little corners of New Mexico that do interesting and fun things, and restaurants and events and things like that. So we're gonna do something that's kind of similar, the interview process, but we'll do it on the spot.
Right.
I'm just super impressed with the people who do this daily, talk to people, and it's not easy. I mean, this is a lot of work for you guys. So I'm liking the learning of that.
Yeah, it's funny. Another friend of mine that has a podcast, she's in the UK. Her podcasts are roughly 10 minutes each, but you spend 10 minutes, but that's probably a 20-minute interview, and then the editing and everything. It is a lot of time, but it's highly rewarding. I at least for me it is. I mean, otherwise I wouldn't be doing it. So that's great, and I love how you talked about setting a goal, being open with it, and you have essentially an accountability partner, being your whole class. So, and it's awesome that they came back to you in January and said, "Hey, how you doing?" So,
right. Well, and I've had them listen to a few of the podcasts that I've started listening to, especially the business ones.
Yeah.
I have a young man in a class that decided he wants to start a YouTube program covering the MMA events.
Yeah.
And I told him, Darian, when I see you in August, I better see your first show up on YouTube. And he went, okay, I'm going to do that. So, because I was telling them about the accountability thing. When people are kind of expecting that, you're like, oh, I got to get that done. So I'm hoping to see it in the fall.
That's fantastic. Well, that all said, what going into, you've got a myriad of experiences here, and different jobs, careers that you're in right now. Out of all those, what experience would you recommend to people to help them kind of get out of their comfort zone, or just for them to grow and learn a new asset or a new facet of themselves?
So I would suggest that, and I tell my students this too, except that they get to wander the halls of a university, so it's a little easier for them. Find something that you would have never thought of doing, and then go look into it, study it, do it. I always tell them, walk down the hall and look on the bulletin board. Are they offering a free class in studying Czechoslovakian? Go take it.
Right.
Or how to make chocolate, and 50 ways to use chocolate. Go take that class.
Where's that
Learn
at?
something different. And yeah, right. And so, one of the things that happened was, I sat in on a class on how to write journals.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And the next thing I knew, I now have 125 books up on Amazon.
Right. And that it's so, I don't want to say it's easy, because it's definitely a commitment. And, when you're starting from nothing, it seems so, it's so huge. But looking back, I mean, looking back, what are you thinking now? Like, do you wish you would have started sooner?
Oh yeah. Well, and the funny thing is when I first started writing the journals, I jokingly said, I'm going to try and do 10 journals in 10 days.
Oh.
And I ended up having to do it to 15 in 15 days. But then the next thing I knew, I kind of got in a groove, and, I'm able to get these things out, and I've done coloring books, and I've done puzzle books, and, I've just had a lot of fun with that as well. But I never thought I'd get any of that done if I hadn't sat in on a class.
Right. So in that realm with books and stuff, is there a book that you would recommend? Not necessarily, about, well, it could be about dogs, but something that you recommend that just really kind of helped you, a light bulb went off, like, wow, that's just, it was so momentous in your life.
I have probably 1,000 books on my Kindle.
Yeah.
And, another, 500 books here at the house that make moving so difficult because people hate to move you because you have boxes and boxes
Right.
of books. So I couldn't really recommend one specific book.
Mm-hmm.
What I always say is get online and start looking for books.
Right.
Go through, I'm forever buying a new book on Amazon, and my students will come to me and say, hey, this is a great book. You might want to read this. So I have stacks and stacks of books that I want to read this summer and really get into some different things.
Yeah, I'm the same way. And it sounds like you and you'll be able to do that this summer on your new adventure that you've got. So,
yeah.
What about a personal habit that you have? And you already kind of talked about how you do the daily reflection, which is, great. Do you have any other, habits that you believe contribute to your continual growth?
Well, this is kind of, odd, but this is one thing I do every morning. I'm getting older, so, sleeping through the night's becoming problematic. I guess everybody who gets older does that.
Yeah.
So I wake up early now, 5:45 every
Okay.
morning. And I'm like wide awake, and I'm thinking, I want to sleep in, but I obviously can't because I'm wide awake. So what I started doing was, reflecting and thanking God for the day.
Mm-hmm.
Then I thought, what I'll do is because I'm lying here, trying to stall about getting up. And I know it sounds goofy, but I go through the alphabet, and I
Okay.
try to come up with one thing to thank God for with each letter of the alphabet.
Oh, all right.
So, yes, A, apples, B, bananas, C, cauliflower is pretty good, I guess. D for dog. And try and do a different one, see if I can come up with a different thing for each letter each day, which forces me to then really think about the wider world and all of the great things that we have in it, and be thankful for it.
That sounds like a fantastic exercise, actually.
It works out well.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. Well, kind of wrapping it up here. Just a few other questions I'd love to ask you. What would you give, my audience? We're all about continual improvement and trying to become the best version of ourselves. What would you share for like parting guidance?
I would say that there's a couple of things that you want to perhaps focus on in your continuous improvement. Number one, find people that can help you and guide you and give you information. The internet, which is the other way, is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
There's those great giant courses that are offered by universities through things like Coursera. Those are wonderful, but you need to talk to people. This is kind of why my granddaughter and I are going on the road,
Right.
and why you do these things. It's one thing to read it on a blog. It's a totally different thing to get it from somebody. And my concern and my fear is that we have a generation of young people who have never had the pleasure of actually talking to somebody with experience and then learning from that.
I agree, and I applaud you for doing that. I do believe it's lacking. Everyone's a zombie looking at their phone walking down the street.
Yes, they are.
Well, so I've got you gave me a list of, your website and everything. What's the best way of people connecting with you? They want to learn more about you and your services.
Well, they can go to the leashuppodcast.com and then find me on Facebook and Twitter under Leash Up. I also have a Gmail address, leashupdogtraining@gmail.com. So any of those ways would be great to find me. I'm out there on social media pretty actively most days. So I'd love to hear from anybody.
All right. Thanks, Laura. And just one more thing here. Do you have anything that you're currently working on, or, a project or a book that, you talked about this podcast that you're about to start, that you want to promote?
The next thing I'm going to start, and I'm planning on doing this in the next month. I already have the foundation built, and I'm working towards it. I'm creating an international herding dog association where people can earn non-competitive herding titles for their dog by videotaping them and their dog working through a course. They'll send me the link, and I'll have judges, AKC type judges, judge the quality of the work. And based on, the number of points that you can get, you can be awarded a title, and it'll be open to anybody on the globe.
Wow. So you don't sleep, do you?
No, not really.
No, that is awesome. I think that's fantastic.
That's true.
Yeah. There's so many, I've traveled a lot, and there's so many corners of this world that, people just don't have access to a lot. So being able to videotape or throw it on YouTube or whatever, I think that's fantastic. It just makes the community that much stronger and bigger. So, well, is there anything that we didn't cover that you would like to bring up before we end?
No, I would just say, for your listeners, trust yourself. Don't undersell yourself. Don't stop reaching, and just have fun, because life is short.
I agree. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much, Laura. I really appreciate your time today, and looking forward to your podcast that's coming out and your international herding dog association. That's going to be fantastic. I'll make sure when that comes out, I'll publish it out. So
thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right. You have a great one.
You too. I really enjoyed speaking with Laura and getting to know her. After our discussion, I thought about what were some of my key takeaways and broke it down to the following. Number 1, failing isn't the end of the world, and in fact, you will most likely learn more from failing than you would from succeeding. Number 2, the A to Z prayer that Laura performs. I personally look at this as a meditation, and I've done it since the interview, and it's rather challenging. That being said, I believe it's a great way to exercise your cognitive skills and reflect upon your day in a different manner. And number 3, a theme that I'm sure we'll hear over and over from our guest is that finding a group of people that will push and challenge you is key to self-development. Those are my 3 key takeaways. What are yours? Join us on social media, share your thoughts and ideas. Thank you for listening, and get out there and discover the best version of you.
Thanks for listening to the UpRev Ninja podcast with your host, Tom Hudson. Navigate to our website at uprev.ninja today, where you will find additional resources to help you discover the best version of you. While you're there, join our newsletter and join the discussion on your favorite social media platforms. We've got some awesome guests lined up to share with us how they are becoming the best versions of themselves. Again, thank you for listening. Now it's time to go out and up-rev your life.